may this be one of the best moments of your life. You're listening to the Business Mirror podcast for a broader look on business with Senior Editor Dennis Estopace.
Good day, I'm Dennis Estopace, and our topic for today is about government's battle against the African swine fever. The journalist behind the story on government's battle against the African swine fever is Business Mirror reporter Jasper Emmanuel Arcalas. For the text version, please go to www.businessmirror.com.ph and search for PHL winning battle versus swine fever but may lose the war. The story of that title was published in the Broader Look section of the Business Mirror newspaper on January 20, 2020. Let's get on with the story. Wrestling with a greased pig, a common fare in local village fiesta celebrations, describes the Philippines' war with a virus that has led to the death of hundreds of thousands of pigs and has maimed the livestock sector. And while government and the private sector believe that they have the upper hand in the battle against the African swine fever, or ASF, the war against this transboundary animal disease, or TAD, is far from being won. 6 months into the outbreak, the Philippines have been slowly learning and adjusting mechanisms to better handle and eradicate ASF in its territories. Government pundits wanted to contain the spread of ASF within Luzon, but due to certain uncontrollable factors, the virus has recently reached the country's largest island group, Mindanao. The African swine fever did not just simply penetrate into the island region. It managed to infect backyard farms in the remote fishing town of Don Marcelino, Davao Occidental, which only had one throughway as exit and entry points. The confirmation of ASF outbreaks in Don Marcelino indeed baffled government authorities. How can a fishing village be struck by a hemorrhagic disease afflicting swines? Nonetheless, this did make government authorities realize that efforts to control and contain the spread of the African swine fever should be doubled, if not tripled, to salvage the Philippines' over 200 billion peso hog industry and avoid the fate of the world's second largest economy, the People's Republic of China. If the Philippines wants to avoid its allies' perilous path towards livestock misery, then it might want to consider ensuring trucks transporting pigs are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. This is one of the points raised by renowned veterinarian Edgar Wayne Johnson Jr., that the Philippines should learn from China's experience in handling the African swine fever. Dr. Johnson presented during the 3-day International Farmers Summit at a convention center in Pasay City via Skype, since he wasn't able to fly to the Philippines due to travel restrictions on China caused by the corona disease of 2019. Citing a research article on the outbreak of the African swine fever in China, Dr. Johnson said dirty infected trucks have been the number one culprit for the spread of the virus in the Asian country. These dirty trucks were also responsible for the transboundary spread of ASF to nearby countries such as Vietnam, according to Johnson, who has spent 15 years as a veterinarian in China. The African swine fever could spread through fomites, objects or materials which are likely to carry infection, such as clothes, utensils and furniture, and, yes, vehicle exteriors. Nobody bothers to clean them, Johnson said. During the summit, Rael Drin Morales outlined the 3 main reasons for the spread of African swine fever in the Philippines. These are swill feeding, illegal movement of sick pigs, and contaminated vehicles. Here is Morales, the head of the government's ASF crisis management team.
So what are the risks? The risk is very high because of trading of diseased animals. It takes a finger-size meat with blood to contaminate or to infect a province. Let's try to have biosecurity. Biosecurity is critical. Let us not try to spread the virus through contaminated vehicles or equipment. During the last phase of the eradication of foot and mouth disease, the highest cases are in slaughterhouses. Would you believe that? In slaughterhouses. Most of the cases, when we did 100% surveillance of all slaughterhouses, we found out that slaughterhouses are actually turned into stockyards.
Another concern for the spread of ASF is the underreporting of suspected cases by hog raisers. Veterinarian Rosette Angeli Arca, who is part of the government's ASF CMT, or Crisis Management Team, noted that most of the cause of the spread of ASF is human-induced. Here is Arca explaining about the cause.
So kung titingnan natin ang bird flu, wherein the main identified na nagsispread is literally bird brain, nilaisip Sa ASF, napakatalino po na nagkakalat.
Recognizing that trucks do pose as one of the biggest threats in spreading one of the world's deadliest animal diseases, the government of Catalonia in Spain encouraged the establishment of cleaning centers. Cleaning centers were constructed by the private sector in key routes of the hog trade to ensure that trucks transporting live pigs are cleaned and disinfected from any viruses. Catalonia's Deputy Director of Livestock, Joaquim Zifra, presented also during the summit the key measures they are doing to prevent the intrusion of ASF in their country that the Philippines could replicate. One of these is the mandatory registration of farms and reporting of movement of live hogs through an online traceability system. This allows the government to monitor movement of live hogs and regularly check on the health of pigs being traded by farmers. The government also requires that every hog farm or hog groups in the region must have an attending veterinarian as part of their mandated biosecurity measure. The government subsidizes the farm by shouldering the salary of their veterinarian. Furthermore, Zifra shared that they conduct a proactive surveillance of all hog farms every 3 to 4 months, depending on the type of pigs they are raising. This, Zifra explains, ensures that no virus has penetrated their farms or borders. Zifra said they also strictly implement their minimum biosecurity measure requirement for all hog farms. He added that failure to comply with required minimum requirements would lead to a suspension of the operations of a farm. What history could easily tell us about the eradication of ASF is that it would be costly once it hits a country. In her presentation, Rosel Falconite Cudal shared that countries that have been first hit by African swine fever shouldered millions of dollars just to control and eventually eradicate the fatal virus. Canada, Mexico, and the United States shouldered a combined expenditure of $9.5 million to address ASF in Haiti that resulted in the total eradication of that country's hog population, according to Falconite Cudal. She added that Brazil spent $1.8 million for its targeted eradication on ASF, while Belgium spent 177 million Belgian francs. Morales was among the veterinarians that led the government's mission to eradicate foot and mouth disease in the 90s, said that efforts being exerted in keeping unaffected areas free from ASF should be doubled since it would be cheaper to keep an area free from a virus. Here is Morales.
Yun pong effort to control the disease in an infected area should be doubled in trying to prevent in the free areas. Why? It is cheaper to prevent a disease coming than to control a disease. Na po. So, when we eradicated FMD, siguro po gumastos tayo ng around maybe 2 billion pesos in the 90s. Pero yung pag-prevent po nun sa Visayas, Mindanao, ang gamit lang natin disinfectants, quarantine officers. It's cheaper but more intense. So the effort should be doubled. Kaya nga po, sabi ni Secretary Dar the other day, we should try to rethink the strategy because it is already being costly. The President gave us ₱1 billion to indemnify affected farmers. Last Monday, the Department of Interior and Local Government called all the local chief executives in this same place para ipakita po yung signed zoning plan natin and to tell them, at this point, I think we are at the 200,000 mark, culled pigs. Yun po yung nasa presentation ng Secretary the other night. So, at 5,000 pesos, yun pong 1 billion na yun ay ubos na. Wala pa yung pangsweldo ng tao, ng more than 100 personnel. So you can only imagine the nightmare.
ARCA noted that the transport ban on live hogs and pork products imposed by various provinces and local government units or LGUs could be detrimental to the country's overall supply situation. ARCA explained that areas with high density of hogs that cannot transport their pigs could suffer a glut, while those areas that have maintained a lockdown could endure a shortage.
What happens in this particular area na sabihin na natin that has a high density of pigs, the live prices will go down. Dito, if konti lang, and sabihin na natin, before ASF, itong municipality na to, or the province na to sends pigs here. Dito, what will happen after the ban is the live pig prices will be retained or higher. There will be local people manning checkpoints. Same thing dito. There will be local people manning checkpoints. There will be permits, katapat ng trucks. At the same time, dito din. Now, hanapin natin, nasan ngayon ang mga tao ng gobyerno. It's either nasa checkpoint or nasa opisina, pumipirma ng permit. Isip na, sino kayo nagsisurveillance? Now, there will be a point in time wherein you will let your guards down. After mga 2 weeks, wala na magbabantay sa checkpoint. If maganda ang presyo dito, I will now try to sell my pigs. I will hide it in the dump truck. Or I will bring it here. Or, there's a municipality that is not, doesn't have restriction bans. I will bring it there, but this municipality is closer to. Ang proposal ko is, can we have a consolidated effort? This municipality, for even imposing a ban, recognizes there will be a point in time this municipality will bring out infected pigs. So why not mag-one Philippines tayo? Pwede bang when there's a break, nandito lahat ng efforts natin? Kahit the labor force nito, the government, nandito, pantayan natin. Para hindi talaga lalabas because the normal reaction of humans is to bring it out. Okay? So bantayan na natin para hindi na kumalat ang sakit. Okay. Now, other reasons for imposing a ban, sometimes it's protectionism. It's not really for protection. But in a way, protectionism can be good, but its benefit will be short-lived. Especially if your pig supply is low. After a while, di na ubra yan. Pre-ASF, the pig industry was not designed to be regionally sufficient. Alam natin, there are movement from North Luzon to Manila, Batangas to Laguna, North Mindanao to Visayas, South Mindanao to Visayas. So, there will come a time na walang supply ang mga yan and magdadala ng infected dyan.
Morales likened the transport ban to stopping water to flow through closing a faucet with one's palms. In the case of a disease outbreak, the leak could be the illegal movement of hogs as unscrupulous traders chase higher prices from free zones.
Kapag ka po tayo ay nag-lockdown, pag tayo ay nag-ban, parang kanyan yung menos sinasakal mo, lalong nagagalit, no? It's like a water running. You try to control it, it will just find a lower ground. Si Alex, it will find the lower ground kung saan merong chances na mag-gravitate doon sa mga lugar na may mga butas. So, yun po. What we do is we manage. We don't lock down, we don't ban. Because when you manage, you bring the stakeholders on the table and you discuss issues, you discuss protocol, you accommodate. We should understand the interests of the traders, we should understand the interests of the farmers.
Industry sources noted that unscrupulous traders could easily transport pork and pork products using civilian cars, since they will not be suspected by guards at checkpoints as a vehicle for transporting goods. One trader noted that only trucks of meat suppliers are inspected at checkpoints. In December, Secretary Dar said that the country's ASF outbreaks are tapering down. This was before Davao Occidental got hit by the disease. During the summit, Secretary Dar disclosed that the fight against ASF has evolved from a battle against a dreaded virus into a people issue. Secretary Dar pointed out that the virus has spread to unaffected areas due to unscrupulous traders and uncooperative citizens. Agriculture Secretary Dar said hog raisers whose pigs are infected are hiding their pigs, and that is being taken advantage of by hog traders themselves, buying at half the price and not following the protocol of slaughtering these infected animals in slaughterhouses. Secretary Dar added that the virus is not the problem anymore. He said that the very problem now is the traders who sell pork and pork meat. Such was the case of the outbreak in Don Marcelino. Initial investigation by the Department of Agriculture indicate that the cause of the ASF outbreaks in the backyard farms were infected pork products brought home by returning residents from Luzon. Secretary Dar called again on the local chief executives. He said they know who are their traders, they know where they are buying these pigs, so it is enhancing our monitoring and surveillance and checking on the trading activities of these hog traders that will substantially and significantly reduce the spread of such virus. Industry players have been lobbying to increase the government's indemnification to every hog culled to contain the spread of ASF, which is from 5,000 pesos to 10,000 pesos, almost at par of market value. Some industry stakeholders said that affected hog raisers should be justly compensated by an amount that may approximate their cost of production. By doing so, hog raisers would be encouraged to surrender their pigs as they will be able somehow to recoup their losses, according to some stakeholders. However, ARCA is lukewarm to raising indemnification to affected hog raisers at par of market value. ARCA explained that matching the prevailing market prices could lead to a backlash, as some farmers may opt to infect their hogs to avail of the indemnification.
Now, this is everybody's dream. I hope there is an indemnification program. Earlier, somebody said the amount should be fair market value, which I hope not. It should be a little lower. Otherwise, if there's a stamping out going on, I will infect so I can claim the indemnification. It's short term, go a little bit lower. Diba? That will happen. I will infect my farm so that the government will pay me. So I will not do all my efforts to prevent it from being infected. So in some provinces, aside from the committed 5,000 pesos by the government, the provincial government is adding to that amount and the city government. So eventually, medyo, it's closer to the market value, but not exactly that amount. So I hope we have a very good indemnification program. Because if you don't, that's one way the pig raisers will start hiding their pigs.
The Department of Agriculture has been reviewing its indemnification program for ASF-affected hog farmers. However, funding limitations remain as the biggest hurdle in raising the compensation. Local government units of areas with confirmed outbreaks of the African swine fever have intervened by providing additional indemnification to ensure that hog raisers cooperate with authorities culling operations by surrendering their pigs within the 1-kilometer quarantine zone. Another thing that local government units should pay attention to is their total live hog inventory. ARCA and Morales pointed out that data is crucial in times of outbreaks, They urge areas that remain free from ASF to already conduct an inventory of their total live hog population. Morales recalled the government's culling operations in Rodriguez, Rizal, wherein they were told by local officials that they only have around 600 pigs, but it turned out to be 16,000 pigs.
Importante alam mo yung population ng baboy sa area mo para makagayak din yung government. Bakit po? Doon po sa Rodriguez, Rizal, ang sabi nila, ang baboy daw nila ron ay 600. Eh nung nagkal na yung baboy doon, 16,000. Ano naman ang gagawin mo? So 600, sabi nga siguro nagkaldo, overnight na damit lang dali natin, 600 lang yan. Bigla hindi na makauwi sa pamilya nila for 2 weeks kasi 16,000 pala kailangan ikal na baboy doon. So what's the problem with that? Paano po yung indemnification fund ng government? Paano po yung resources na italagay doon sa area? Paano po tayo makakagaya kung hindi natin alam yung population natin? So perhaps we can do the X-ray also to get the proper population count.
Morales said the lack of data on hog population will also lead to underreporting of cases, since realities on the ground are not on the radar of government officials. Morales is proposing that LGUs adopt the so-called X-ray approach of surveillance that Thailand is employing in handling its own bird flu outbreaks.
Sa mga kasamahan po natin sa LGU, what we are requesting is if we can have an X-ray approach. May nakikita ko mga kasamahan sa LGU. What is an X-ray approach? Thailand did this with avian influenza. And we can do it with a little deviation. So how it can work? If I'm a provincial veterinarian and I have 20 municipalities under my jurisdiction, I will ask all the municipal agriculture officer, all the city vet or the municipal vet to make sure that all barangay in their area is visited by somebody from their office. Not necessarily a technical person. Hindi po kailangan veterinaryo yung bumisita sa lahat ng barangay doon sa probinsya. Kailangan lang chismoso. Bakit? Rumor tracking eh. Alam po ba ninyo, sa FAO at sa OIE, every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, FAO and OIE headquarters, they have people with GLUES. GLUES is the Global Early Warning System. So, yung lahat po ng kinalap na information the previous day, pinagmimitingan nila the following day at 8 o'clock. At kasama po doon yung rumor tracking. I have a colleague in FAO, I work at the regional office. I have a colleague and his assignment is tracking rumors. Lahat ng sites, lahat ng newspapers, tinitingnan niya yan. May application para may mga keywords. Pag nag-light yun, in-extract na yun. Hanggang sa ridiculous na mga article, tinatrack po yan. So rumor tracking, kailangan chismoso lang. Punta ka sa isang barangay, sa isang lugar naman po, pupuntahan mo lang yung barangay captain. Saan ang mga magbababoy dito? Marami ba kayong baboy dito? Oh, andyan, maraming baboy dyan. Wala po bang nagkakasakit na baboy dito o walang namamatay? Maraming baboy dyan. Siguro kung titingnan mo, mga 300 ang baboy yan. Tingnan mo. Pagpunta mo, titingnan mo lang yung size ng baboyan. Nasa likod bahay. So, i-assume mo, siguro mga baboy dito, 150. Ilan pong namatay sa baboy ninyo? Last month may namatay isa. Kahapon may namatay isa. So, cause for alarm? Hindi po siguro, no? Pero kung halimbawa dyan ay merong 100 baboy, sinabi nila, may namatay nga mga baboy. Ilan namatay? 100. Patay sila lahat. It will trigger na po. It will trigger your curiosity. And if that happens, that's the time you inform the local veterinary authorities so that they can send technical people to do the outbreak investigation and to collect the samples.
Prior to the confirmation of ASF outbreaks in Rizal Province in August 2019, the Bureau of Animal Industry of the Department of Agriculture has been employing the BABES approach to prevent the intrusion of the virus. The BABES approach is an acronym that stands for Ban Pork Imports, Avoid Swill Feeding, Block Entry, Educate Our People, and Submit Lab Samples. But after the virus managed to spread to over 12 provinces in at least 3 regions and resulted in the culling of over 200,000 hogs, the Bureau of Agriculture and Industries adopted a new approach and a new acronym called LIEMPO. The LIEMPO approach is an acronym which stands for Locate, Hold, and Cull, Improve Surveillance and Reporting, Educate Stakeholders, Mobilize Supporters, Protect Free Zones, and Optimize Biosecurity. The LIEMPO program was presented by Philippine authorities at the third meeting on Standing Group of Experts on ASF of the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Organization for Animal Health. To date, the total number of hogs susceptible to African swine fever, as reported by the Philippines to the World Organization for Animal Health, has reached 204,889 heads. Authorities have culled 208,924 pigs to contain and control the spread of the virus. So far, the Philippines has confirmed ASF outbreaks in the following provinces: Pampanga, Tarlac, Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, Quezon, Isabela, Benguet, Kalinga, Davao Occidental, Davao City, Aurora, Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, and Metro Manila, among others. The government estimates that the hog industry is losing at least 1 billion pesos every month since the confirmation of the African swine fever in the country in August of 2019. However, industry projections indicate a gloomier situation for the hog industry if the ASF is left uncontrolled by the government. During the summit in February 2020, Philippine Veterinary Drug Association President Eugene Mende said the spread of the fatal hog disease, if left unchecked, could wipe out more than half of the country's pig herd, or almost 8 million heads. This projection was made by the Philippine Veterinary Drug Association in partnership with the local hog industry stakeholders. Mende said this will cause farm gate prices to go up by 20% to more than 30%. The farm gate prices of hogs may rise to 115 pesos per kilogram to 120 pesos per kilogram. Morales emphasized that local government units should create their respective ASF task forces and regional plans to prevent the entry of the disease and how they will act should the virus penetrate their borders. The plan must identify critical nodes in their respective jurisdictions where the ASF can penetrate and interventions suitable in their areas, considering that each region has different topography and geography. Furthermore, Morales added, the LGUs should also invest in improving the biosecurity of backyard racers instead of just imposing bans and lockdowns on ASF-infected areas. Under the government zoning plan, the local government unit where the ground zero farm or infected farm is located shall shoulder all the costs incurred in culling operations, salary of workers, and other logistical requirements. The contingency measure is in line with the devolution of national powers to local government units.
Marami po tayong kasamahan sa LGU. You should know that we will live and we will die, or we will die with ASF on how LGUs will react. Ano po? So, hindi po ito ipinapasa yung PAC sa LGU, but that is the reality. Sad to say, with the local government code, a lot of technical functions has been devolved to the local government units. But this is not saying that the national government, the national agencies, BAI, NMIS, etc. will be leaving the LGU. The point is, the LGU has to do their job.
For instance, Morales said, the government's protocol is not a one-size-fits-all mechanism, considering the peculiarities of each region in the country.
Hindi natin po pwedeng idikta sa kanila kung ano yung dapat nilang gawin kasi may one size does not fit all.
Minsan din nga nabanggit niyo sa Ilocos may sarili silang realities.
May sarili silang realities on the ground, so maaaring may peculiarity sila, yung mga ganung bagay. So sa kanila siguro depende, di ba? So halimbawa sa Cordillera may ang need nila ng mga baboy diyan, yung mga black pig para sa kanyaw. Paano mo i-address yun, yung gano'n? So dapat ang sinasabi lang natin is sila yung nakakaalam ng mga peculiar situations sa kanila. So sila yung mag-identify nito mga basic concerns na to, and they should identify the interventions as well, and in the process nasa kanila yung ownership.
The Department of Agriculture is banking on its nationwide progressive ASF zoning plan to eradicate the fatal hog disease. The Department of Agriculture issued its Administrative Circular 12, dated December 10, 2019, that formally ordered the establishment of zones across the country relative to the level of risks of regions in relation to ASF. The DA noted that its progressive zoning approach was instrumental in the successful eradication of foot and mouth disease in the Philippines through intensified surveillance and animal movement management. Administrative Circular 12 said that the concept of zoning and compartmentalization of the different administration regions in the country based on their common disease status to protect unaffected areas while controlling disease in infected regions, and progressive elevation of infected status to protected and eventually to free zones while building up measures to prevent reinfection. Agriculture Secretary Dar said the National Zoning and Movement Plan for African Swine Fever will guide movement protocols intended to control the spread of the virus. The zones are defined and classified based on geographical limits established by the veterinary authorities upon identification of the infected zone and the quarantine zone. According to Administrative Circular 12, zone classification status will be reviewed regularly depending on the epidemiological changes of the disease. The implementation of a nationwide zoning plan is seen by the government as a way not to disrupt trade among provinces, particularly among ASF-free areas. This is to address the series of bans being imposed by provincial governments on the trade and entry of hogs and pork-related products within their jurisdictions. Under the zoning plan, provinces and regions would be classified based on their ASF status, which entail corresponding guidelines on the extent that they can transport and sell hogs, pork, and pork products. The country's provinces or regions would be classified under two general zones, the containment zone and the free zone. The containment zone is further categorized into 4 zones depending on the area's ASF status. Red is for the infected zone, yellow is for the surveillance zone, pink is for the buffer zone, light green is the protected zone. The zoning plan would also allow government to focus efforts to limit the spread of the disease, as it allows a progressive control in the affected areas and reducing risks in free areas. Despite the issuance of the zoning plan, local government units were adamant to comply with it, with most of the local executives retaining their pork bans, citing the need to protect their respective hog industries from the economically disrupting African swine fever. This forced the Department of Agriculture in December 2019 to request Malacanang to issue an executive order that would compel LGUs to observe the national zoning plan. 2 months later, on February 5, 2020, President Duterte signed Administrative Order 22, which mandated local government units to comply with the Administrative Circular 12 of the Department of Agriculture, or the National Zoning Plan for the African Swine Fever. Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya warned local government units that non-compliance to the zoning plan, which he said are in line with the law, would be deemed illegal. Malaya told the Business Mirror in an ambush interview in Malacanang that if there is any local government unit, they could be cited for violation of law. Malaya said when you have someone cited for violation of law, that is considered grave misconduct and could lead to suspension or removal from office. Morales said the DA is now arranging regional stakeholders forum with local government units so that everyone would have a unified appreciation and interpretation of the zoning plan.
Yung ASF, makikita po natin yung magiging galaw niyan doon sa implementation natin sa zoning. Kung susunod ng maayos lahat, magkakaroon tayo ng smooth implementation, I think mas mabilis pa sa 5 years kaya natin.
Thank you for listening to the Business Mirror podcast. For a broader look on business, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Business Mirror. Until next time.